Okay, as an introduction to the US government, we are going to focus on the three branches of government, and we will pay special attention to the executive branch. Okay, so basically you have the judicial branch, the legislative branch, and the executive branch. When they drafted the Constitution, they wanted a system of checks and balances, with the idea of a real balance between each institution. So, the legislative branch, basically it's Congress, which is made up of the House of Representatives, okay, they represent the people, and the Senate that represents the states as entities. So, of course, they have the legislative power. They share nominations with the president. They have the power of impeachment, which is actually a great power, but it is ineffective in practice. It's been used 3 times and never worked. You can think, for example, after Nixon resigned, he was pardoned by Ford. And they have the power to declare war. Now, bear that in mind because we'll need to qualify that slightly. Okay, I'm skipping the judicial branch and we're now going to focus exclusively on the executive branch, the president. He represents the nation in its unity, okay? He is elected via indirect elections. There's an electoral college that is representative of the American people and of the different states. What's really interesting is that in the Constitution, its role isn't precisely described. And this will later give rise to interpretations and flexibility, making this branch much more powerful than intended by the Founding Fathers. Of course, the president doesn't work alone, okay? You'll find working alongside the White House office, the National Security Council, that since 1947 helps the president with questions relating to national defense and foreign affairs, the CIA that you know, of course, and its director is one of the most important advisors for the president. Actually, the list is very, very long. Okay, other powers they have. So, veto, of course. It was used 300 times by Roosevelt. You also have the pocket veto. Shared nominations with Congress. We've said that already. Oh, and they have executive privilege. So, it says, he, the president, shall from time to time give to Congress information on the state of the Union. So you can appreciate how vague the definition is. And last of all, he's what we call chief legislator. These two are probably the most important ones. He's commander-in-chief. It says that he wages war. Okay, he doesn't declare war. As we'd said, Congress declares war. The president wages war. Now, interestingly enough, since 1946, the US has never declared war. And that's due to this very tricky constitution, okay? It's very vague to wage war, to declare war. But of course, we also have what we call military interventions. And so you may think that the US has been at war for quite a long time with a diversity of countries, but in fact it's what we call military interventions, and this is something the president can decide on his own. Also very interesting are what we call executive agreements. They sort of replace a treaty, which is something that requires Congress's approval. And so what you see here is that if we follow really the idea, the philosophy behind the Constitution, it was Congress's power to declare war, but also to conclude a treaty. What we see, in fact, is that Congress has been completely bypassed because the president just has to organize what we call a military intervention, and in which case does not need to declare war, and can now even bypass Congress with executive agreements. It's what Vincent Michelot calls le parallélisme des procédures. Vincent Michelot refers to modern presidency as an imperial presidency. Why? Well, first of all, the president has popular legitimacy, okay, thanks to elections. Secondly, the constitution being so vague leaves quite a lot of room for flexibility. Thirdly, The double crisis in the 1930s, so an economic crisis plus an international crisis, gave the president extra constitutional powers. The president also has a lot of power concerning foreign affairs. You can think of Nixon in 1972, who recognized the Republic of China on his own, without Congress. So what we notice is a story of constant power struggle. The twin effect of the Watergate scandal and the Vietnam War gave way to retreat of the presidency in favor of Congress. But after that, they had Ford and Carter as presidents. And so what Michelot explains is that Ford and Carter's terms were enough to convince the Americans that the weakening of the presidency went hand in hand with the weakening of the nation. When Reagan comes to power, he's considered by many as a master of foreign policy and economy. And so presidency is strong again. But then, of course, it will be weakened with Bush and Clinton. However, with the terrorist attacks came a great opportunity to expand their power, because it was the first attack since 1941. And something very interesting is that every president who has won a war has been re-elected. Congress even passed a resolution authorizing Bush at the time of the terrorist attacks to use, and I quote, all necessary and appropriate force. So the conclusion to draw here is that presidential powers are not fixed, but tend to fluctuate. There's been an impressive expansion of powers, and it spreads over almost a century. But however great the power, it remains conditional, because when Congress asserts its power with the support of public opinion, the presidency is in full retreat.